if you wanted to become a millionaire and you're 20 years old, if you invest $95 a month at the age of 20, by the time you're 65, you will have $1 million. If you invested into a general index fund that tracks the S&P 500, by the time you're 65, you will have $1 million. Let's fast forward that to 25. If you're 25 years old because you didn't capitalize on those early years in your 20, if you're 25 years old, to have $1 million by the age of 65, you have to invest $158 a month. So I'm not saying that you can't do it as time go on, but if you're in your 20s, your early 20s, you have the prime opportunity. Every dollar that you invest is worth $88. If you invest $95 a month from 20 to 65, you're a millionaire. But if you wait 5 years, now you're going to have to invest $158. What's going on? I'm Marcus. Welcome back to the channel where we're following my family's financial freedom journey and learning and talking about finances because we on the road trying to become first generation millionaires. One of these days, I'll probably go ahead and disclose the date. I got a date. We'll talk about that in another episode. Before we get started, I'm a licensed attorney, but I'm not your attorney, so no legal, no financial advice. Just talking finances, experiences, giving my opinion, and letting y'all know what we got going on here in the household of the debt-free dad. In today's video, I actually like this video. I like this topic. We're going to talk about ways that you should maneuver, how you should maneuver with your money in your 20s, the do's and don'ts. I like this topic. I thought this topic was dope because one, I'm old as hell. So it gives me an opportunity to reflect back because I did a lot of these stupid things. I can talk directly to those pitfalls. So we're going to do 20s, 30s, then I'm gonna talk about 40s, what you want to do, what I'm hoping to do when I get to that because I'm in that age bracket. So we're gonna go ahead and chop it up. We're gonna start with the 20s. We're gonna talk about the do's and the don'ts, the pitfalls, and we're gonna give you some cool numbers to show how you can easily become a millionaire if you are in your 20s. So if you got someone in their 20s in your family, your kid, friends, niece, nephews, definitely share this video with them. Let's go ahead and dive in. Okay, the first thing that we have to understand, if you are in your 20s, if you are 20 years old, 22, 23, 25, if you're in your 20s, if you're 20-year-old, you are already a billionaire. I'm not, y'all, I know y'all probably like, man, this dude bugging. How am I a billionaire if you are 20 years old, you're a billionaire, the most important thing that anyone can have, and that's not money, that's time. The average life expectancy is 77 years old. If you're 20 years old, you have 1.64 billion seconds remaining on this earth until you reach the age of 77. So, that being said, the most important thing when you're talking about investment, there's really three things that are important. One is discipline, two is creating an income, generating money, which comes from discipline, and three is time. So, if you're a 20-year-old, you're a billionaire of time. Any billionaire right now, I don't care if it's Warren Buffett, I don't care if it's Jeff Bezos, any billionaire right now, I guarantee if you ask them, would you give up your whole fortune to be 20 years old again? They probably would say yes. Because, first of all, those guys, if they're 20 right now, they could create all that same damn money over. They could create more. They'll probably create more money if they were 20 now than they did previously in their current life. But I guarantee you, any millionaire, billionaire, if they could, if someone said give up everything you have and start over from scratch to be 20, probably 90% of them would say yeah. So I mean, I would. I ain't no billionaire, but I start over. Well, it depends. I would start over from 20 if I could go back and be 20 with everyone else who is my age now. I don't want to be 20 with these 20-year-old. These kids today, they built a little different. The first thing in your 20s that you have to do to win with money is acquire financial knowledge. I don't care if that's reading a book. I don't care if it's doing a Google search, open source research, looking on YouTube. Acquiring financial knowledge is key. There are all those good books out there that people talk about, The Millionaire Next Door, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. But acquiring financial knowledge is the foundational principle for any person in their 20s to gain wealth. There's a multiple way. This technology at the tip palm of your hand. So acquiring financial knowledge is the number one thing that any person in their 20s should probably do. The number two thing that I think is really important is get in the habit of actually calculating your net worth. I didn't calculate my net worth till I was probably in my late 20s, maybe 28 or 29. But if you're in your early 20s, you graduated, you actually got a job where you're no longer broke, you actually have some type of income, start actually sitting down at least once or twice a year and going over your net worth statement. Add up everything that you own, all of your money, all of your income, everything you have in your savings, checkings account, and then subtract everything you owe. If it's a car note, if it's a student loan, if it's any type of debt, a loan to your parents, and see where you are financially. Remember, your net worth is a very good indicator of financial health. So you really should start tracking that early and often, at least twice a year in your 20s to get in the habit of doing so. In your 20s, you have all this time, but there are some pitfalls that you definitely need to avoid when you're in your 20s. I think the number one pitfall for me was this is just my take, but the number one pitfall for me in my 20s was procrastination because I knew I had so much time. So I would say, "Ah, I don't have to do that right now. I don't have to do that right now." And what would I do? I would put it off, and a day would become a week, and a week would become a month, and a month would eventually become a year where I never did what I actually thought about doing or what I said I was going to do or what I intended to do, but just fell through from doing it. So procrastination is something that you really have to watch in your 20s. When you're young and you have so much time and such a future ahead of you, just from a time standpoint, you tend to take the here and now for granted. So definitely don't that. Try not to be a procrastinator. If you have something that you want to do, try to set the goals in place so you can attain it now. The next pitfall that I think people in their 20s have to avoid is unnecessary flashy debt. Let's just be realistic and keep it. But and I can really speak for the fellas and ladies. I don't know. This may or may not apply to y'all, but fellas, we have to avoid unnecessary debt based on flash. And I tell you, because I've done all these stupid things. A lot of times that's going to be in the form of a car. You're going to get a car that you probably can't afford, or you're going to get a car that you can afford, but you're going to put thousands of dollars worth of unnecessary stuff in it, like spinning rims, TVs. I lied you not. I had a homeboy. This dude had a TV in the gas. When the gas cap popped open on that little cap, it was a little 2-inch TV right there. I was like, what the hell are you watching at the gas pump? He didn't have a rear view mirror in his car. The rear view mirror was gone and there was a TV right there. So a lot of times in your 20s, that is going to be, especially when you get out of high school or you graduate college and you really get that first job and start generating income. A lot of times, especially with that car, you like to get that car as a status symbol of look what I did, especially those guys who graduated. Hey, I graduated college. Let me go out and get that BMW. Let me go out and get that Jaguar or whatever the hell the pick is. Be cautious of flashy debt. That's point number one. Also, with that is be very careful with student loans. I'm the debt-free dad. I'm paying off my student loans and I'm an old ass guy. Be cautious because the decisions you make in your 20s can impact you going forward. As a general rule, it's always best to cash flow school. If I could do it over, I probably would have cash flow things. I probably would have set out a couple of years to stack up and get in-state tuition so that when I went to law school, it would have been cheaper. But hindsight is 2020. I just wanted to get in and go and get into someone's law school. So it is what it is. But try to avoid student loan debt. If by chance a individual wants to go to school and has to get a loan, you have to be very cognizant in your 20s of one, the school you attend, whether it's private or public. One, the school you attend, whether it's private or public. Two, you have to really put some thought into your major. Is your major going to be something that can produce you a sufficient income when you graduate? Are you going to have to go get a master's because your major essentially requires a master's? Or is your major something that's going to really hinder you from actually being able to get in the workforce because it's just not a major that's viable? In my opinion, if you do have to take out student loans to go to school, I guess the best way to do it, and this is kind of what I would have done, had I had to take out student loans, I would have taken out student loans and I would have tried to make sure the amount of my student loan was not more than what I expected to realistically make my first year's salary after graduation. So if I graduated in criminal justice and I knew that, oh, I could probably get a job in this particular field making $35,000 a year, that's my cap for my student loan would be $35,000 because I wouldn't want to have student loans that are more than the income that I would make after I graduate. So that's one thing you have to do. Be cautious of debt, the flashy debt, the cars, the clothes, trying to impress people, but also really be cognizant of the student loan debt. That's probably the most dangerous, in my opinion, because the student loan debt is sold as flash. Because if you want to get this, you have to get this degree, and that's kind of how it's sold. And we oftentimes buy into it, but that's not necessarily the case. Now, the first thing we talked about is acquiring financial knowledge. Inside of acquiring financial knowledge, and I got to glance over because I don't want to miss anything, is with that financial knowledge in your 20s, one of the key things you have to remember is don't get complex with your investments. In your 20s, you should not be trying to invest in complex, volatile things. If you're investing money in your 20s, you should look for growth funds, index funds, mutual funds, things that track the S&P 500, things that you know are going to have consistent growth because you have time on your hands. Let's break down the numbers. At the age of 20, every $1 invested into an ETF, an index fund that tracks the S&P 500, if you retired at 65, from the age of 20, every $1 you invested has the potential to turn to $88. That's what I mean by time is on your side. When you're 20, every dollar you invest, by the time you reach 65, is going to be worth $88. Now, let's look fast forward. Let's say you are 25 years old. What do you think every dollar that you invest at the age of 25 will be worth when you retire at 65? $44. So at the age of 20, every dollar is worth $88 when it's invested when you retire at 65. Just 5 years later, at the age of 25, every dollar you invest by the time you turn 65 is only worth $44. So remember, time is on your side. So the earlier you start, the better. Me, honestly, I didn't really start investing until I was maybe 27. I didn't really get kind of serious about it till I was 29. So the earlier you start, the better. I'm just telling y'all the numbers. So let's just kind of think about this. If you wanted to become a millionaire and you're 20 years old, if you invest $95 a month at the age of 20, by the time you're 65, you will have $1 million. If you invested into a general index fund that tracks the S&P 500, by the time you're 65, you will have $1 million. Let's fast forward that to 25. If you're 25 years old because you didn't capitalize on those early years in your 20, if you're 25 years old, to have $1 million by the age of 65, you have to invest $158 a month. So I'm not saying that you can't do it as time go on, but if you're in your 20s, your early 20s, you have the prime opportunity. Every dollar that you invest is worth $88. If you invest $95 a month from 20 to 65, you're a millionaire. But if you wait 5 years, now you're going to have to invest $158. Isn't that me? It's just kind of how the numbers break out. That's why I'm telling y'all that time is so important. The other thing, when we talk about that acquiring financial knowledge, the other key that falls into that category is understanding the concept of living below your means. If you can master living below your means, making a dollar to spend 70 cents as opposed to most people who make a dollar to spend $2, if you can master that, you are already thinking on a different mindset. Statistically, 54% of the US population spends more than what they make. Think about it, 54%. So if you line up 10 people, essentially five and a half of them are spending more than they make every paycheck, every month, every year. So that is very big when it comes to acquiring financial knowledge. If you can understand that concept of living off of less than you earn, you'll definitely be ahead of the game. And I think the last thing that I wanted to talk about, because there's so many things I could talk about, but I don't want to make this video so damn long. The last thing I want to talk about is, especially fellas, I already know the name of the game. You're gonna spend money on the ladies. You're gonna spend money going out. You're gonna spend money, like, especially when you're in your early 20s. You go like, oh man, we go to Miami. Like when you my age, when I go out, if I travel, my two rules on traveling is I don't want to do nothing that I can do at home, and I don't want to eat anything or any place that I can eat at home. But when I was in my 20s and I would go out, it would be somewhere like Miami or Vegas where I would go out. I would be like, okay, I got enough to go out and stay in this hotel with about five of my friends, and I'm gonna eat fresh at Subway. I'm gonna eat McDonald's. So it's inevitable. We fellas, you're gonna spend money on clothes. You're gonna spend money on things to try to impress the ladies. That's just kind of part of the game. Just have that financial knowledge stashed in the back of your head. The other thing is, and this is just a big point, and I'll talk about this more when we get into the 30s, because the 30s is a real unique period. But in your 20s, if you can avoid a relationship decision, you will put yourself in a prime opportunity to succeed. There's actually a statistic out there, but this statistic shows that people who graduate high school, people who get married before they have children are statistically 70% more likely to become millionaires. So if you're in your 20s, ladies, gentlemen, I don't give a damn who's watching this. If you can avoid relationships that are damaging, if you can avoid having children prior to a time when you're financially ready to have them, you are really setting yourself up for success in the future. Um, it's a I mean, one of the key indicators of poverty is divorce. So just think about it. The partner that you choose is going to be detrimental in not only your personal development and your emotional development, but also in your financial development. So in your 20s, hey, I get it, have fun, do what you want to do, but hey, be safe because certain mistakes can be mistakes that last a lifetime, and so that's just kind of one of those things you have to take into context. Those are just kind of some of the general rules that I think that the rules and the pitfalls that people have to think about and consider if you want to win with money in your 20s. Again, like I said, everybody who's 20 years old, you're a billionaire of time because you got 1.64 billion seconds left on this earth before you each reach the age of 77. So you're in a position where you can grow wealth and do it the easy way because you're starting so early as opposed to somebody like me who waited till he was like 28, 27, 29 to get started. That's it for this video. I hope y'all enjoyed it. We'll probably hit the 30s next week because the 30s it get crazy. The 30s get a little messy because that 30s you got marriage, you got houses, you got all sorts of craziness that comes up in your 30s. So we'll probably chop it up on money lessons and pitfalls of avoiding your 30s next week. Y'all take care. I enjoy y'all. As always, I appreciate y'all for tuning in. Y'all be blessed. Peace.